She thought I'd never find out. But I found the emails, the hotel, and the man she was really going to Paris for, and that's when I stopped being the fool and started becoming the problem. Hey folks, this is real. No fiction here. If you've ever had your world flipped upside down in a matter of seconds, you'll understand what I'm about to say. I guess in hindsight the Boy Scouts had the right idea: be prepared. But let's be real, nothing really prepares you for this. Now there's that scout law, you know? Stuff like a scout being loyal, helpful, brave, all that. Turns out they forgot to mention, don't be a fool. I was all those things. Trusting to a fault. And now I see how blind I really was. My name's Nick. Well, it was Nick in that version of my life. Let's say I'm Matt now. And the woman I married? Let's call her Rachel. 5 years of marriage, and I never thought I'd be that guy, the one who accidentally uncovers the truth while doing something as innocent as trying to surprise his wife with flowers. Rachel had mentioned she'd be flying to Paris for work in a few weeks. Said it was some tedious arbitration thing, nothing glamorous. Just late nights, meetings, and not much time for sightseeing. I didn't press her, truth is I should've. But instead, I thought I'd be the sweet husband and send flowers to her hotel while she was there. Just a little gesture to remind her I was thinking about her. So I grabbed her phone off the charger one night, thinking I could find the hotel name without waking her. I mean, it was just easier than asking again and risking a weird conversation. Our talks had been more tense lately anyway. Her passcode was easy, it was the date of our wedding. That hit me hard later. I didn't go digging. I swear I didn't. But when I opened her mail app, I saw an email thread pop up. Her inbox was open. I glanced, and then I froze. The subject line? Midnight on the Seine. It wasn't work-related. It was anything but. I tapped it, and that's when the world shifted. Turns out, Rachel hadn't been planning late nights in boardrooms. She had been planning moonlit walks down the Champs-Élysées and romantic boat rides under the stars. Not with me. With someone named Dwayne. Dwayne. I knew the name. He worked with her. A paralegal at her firm. A guy I'd shaken hands with at holiday parties. I felt my stomach tighten just thinking about it. The two of them had been emailing back and forth, using their work accounts like amateurs. Lawyers and paralegals, people who know that everything you write can come back to haunt you during discovery in a case. They'd reviewed thousands of emails like these for litigation just like I had. We all knew better. And yet here they were, doing the exact thing we always laughed about catching others doing. The email spanned weeks. Flirty, reckless, intimate. Nothing explicit but full of promises and inside jokes. They talked about finding moments for each other amid the chaos of the trip. Stolen time. Quiet dinners. Secret smiles across the courtroom. The worst part? I felt it before I saw it. When Rachel first told me about the trip, she said it so casually, eyes on her phone, not on me. She waved it off like it wasn't even worth remembering. And I knew then, something was off. I just didn't want to believe it. But reading those emails? It all snapped into focus. Rachel always knew how much Paris meant to me. It wasn't just a bucket list city, it was our someday dream. The one we'd talk about over wine late at night when life felt soft around the edges. She'd never been and we always said we'd go together. So when she brushed it off like it was no big deal, something about it felt off. But I didn't think it was this. Now here I was, staring at her phone, reading through a string of emails that felt like they were cutting into my chest one line at a time. I wish you'd just ditched the Boy Scout already, Dwayne had written last night. She replied, he makes me feel safe. And then came Dwayne's cold response, then why are you betraying him every chance you get? Topped off with a smiley face like this was all some kind of joke. Made my skin crawl. I didn't know what to do in that moment. My mind was racing, heart pounding, but the one thing that kicked in right away was habit. I was a lawyer. Evidence mattered. So I hit print. Our basement printer connected to the Wi-Fi buzzed to life while I stood frozen in the hallway, gripping her phone like it might catch fire. When the pages were done, I slid them into my laptop bag like they were top secret files. In some messed up way they were. Then the thoughts came. And they were dark. Part of me wanted to confront her with rage. I imagined the look in her eyes if I let all that anger boil over. Then another image, one that scared me, flashed in my mind, holding her close as if nothing had changed, leaning in like I was about to kiss her, then shoving her into one of those pine trees out back, just far enough into the woods where no one could see. And when she screamed, not from pain but from shock, I'd do it again. And again. I hated that the thought crossed my mind. That part of me even considered violence. But that's the truth. And it shook me. I've never raised a hand to anyone. Not once. But betrayal? Betrayal brings out parts of you that you didn't even know were there. As for Dwayne? I felt even less restraint when I thought about him. But this wasn't the time. I couldn't go down that road, not yet. I had to think. That's what I was trained to do. That's what I got paid for, using my head, not my fists. And I didn't have long. Rachel was out on her morning run and she'd be back any minute. Before I could plan anything though, I had one last task. I still needed to find the name of her hotel in Paris. Not for flowers anymore. I didn't even know why I needed it, but I needed it. Maybe as a destination. Maybe as a target. And there it was, Hotel de Lello, right near the Trocadero, a short walk from the Eiffel Tower. 5 minutes from the International Chamber of Commerce. Exactly where she'd said the arbitration meetings would be. At least when she and Dwayne weren't sneaking off to find time for each other. With the location locked in, I opened my laptop and did what any litigator would do. I looked up divorce law in Virginia. I remembered the basics from the bar exam 5 years ago, but I wanted the specifics fresh in my head. Adultery. Grounds for divorce. Potential impact on alimony and property division. But there was a catch: condonation. If a spouse finds out about the affair but chooses to stay and resume the relationship, it could be used as a defense. In other words, if I stayed under the same roof, acted like nothing happened, kissed her goodnight, I'd be weakening my case. I had to leave. And fast. No confrontation. Not yet. Just distance. And time. And silence. For now. Matt had no intention of exploding in the heat of the moment. No, he was going to dismantle this marriage with the same quiet control he used in a courtroom. No outbursts. No drama. Just strategy, calculated and precise. If Rachel thought she'd seen him at his most composed, she was about to learn what real composure looked like. He remembered something Churchill once said: "In wartime, truth is so precious, it should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies." That line felt strangely fitting. His silence now would serve a greater purpose. There was no oath being taken here. No court date yet. Just preparation. He headed upstairs and began packing. Not for a vacation this time, and not in haste. Each fold, each zipper pulled closed, was done with quiet intention. Within 20 minutes he had 2 suitcases by the front door. Then he turned to the essentials. Back downstairs in his office he gathered all the critical documents: bank statements, credit card records, mortgage files, titles to the cars, copies of Rachel's student loans, and his own retirement plans. Everything he'd need if it came to a courtroom fight. Which, at this point, seemed inevitable. He heard the back door open. Rachel was home from her run. By the time he came up from the basement, he made sure he looked just tired enough. Not angry. Not suspicious. Just like a man overwhelmed by work and life. She was standing in the kitchen, sipping a lemon-lime Gatorade, her shoulder-length hair pulled back into a ponytail. She looked good. She always had. But whatever love he'd felt before, that had been burned clean out of him. With a tight smile he said, "Guess what? I'm heading to Paris." She froze. Rachel's face went pale, her blue eyes darting. "Paris?" she repeated, too casually. "Yeah," Matt nodded, his voice cool. "Work emergency. Simon's having a breakdown on site and needs me there. Last-minute thing." He moved past her to grab his bags. She followed, clearly trying to act normal. "What do you want for dinner?" she asked from the hallway. "Can't stay. I'll pick something up on the road," he replied, already zipping up his coat. "Flight's out of Newark tonight." At the door she leaned in, puckering her lips for a goodbye kiss. He tilted his head away. "Think I'm catching something?" he muttered. "Don't want to pass it to you." Then he stepped outside and left her standing there, lips still half pressed together in the cold. The next few days, Matt worked out of a hotel about 30 minutes away, keeping his distance but staying close enough to act quickly. Then one afternoon a guy named Sam Granger showed up out of nowhere. Apparently he'd gotten Matt's number from old property records. "Name's Sam," he said, holding out a card. "I buy older homes, tear 'em down, build custom jobs. Look, I get it, no one likes what I do, until I'm handing them a check." He talked fast, like a man used to hearing no but not really listening to it. Matt just blinked. The house wasn't old. It was cozy. Solid. The kind of place you raise kids in. The kind of place you thought you'd grow old in. "I'll be in and out of town this week," Matt told him. "Can't promise access." "Don't need it," Sam said. "Already scoped it out. It's a tear down. Outside tells me all I need to know." "Sunday work for you?" Matt hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. I'll meet you." "One more thing, I'll probably be doing the paperwork myself," Matt added. "Rachel's too buried in work lately to bother." "No problem," Sam said. "We've got a standard POA form. I'll bring it." Matt jotted down the details, and as he closed his notebook he saw it, clearer than before. The beginning of a plan. Rachel felt safe, like she had this under control. And that was going to be her mistake. Later that evening Matt met with Frank, an old friend and fellow attorney. Frank listened carefully as Matt laid it all out, step by step. "You think she'll bring that guy into your house? Into your bed?" Frank asked, almost not believing it. "She's smart," Matt said. "Top of her law school class. But arrogant. Arrogant enough to think she can't be caught. Or if she is, that she can talk her way out of it." He leaned forward. "No. This one? I'm doing myself." "I owe you big time for the Rivera divorce," Matt said, leaning back in the chair across from Frank. "The buzz from that case hasn't stopped. My phone's been ringing non-stop." Frank gave a half smile, lifting his coffee mug like a quiet salute. "Glad it worked out. And hey," Matt added, "there's a treehouse in the backyard if you ever want to escape your own problems for a bit." They both chuckled, but only for a moment. The mood sobered again as they returned to the real reason they were sitting in that quiet corner of the coffee shop. Matt's marriage was unraveling fast. Harry, another friend in the legal circle, was handling the clear and convincing evidence angle. That wasn't going to be hard. They had the emails, the timeline, the hotel booking. The harder part? The money. The splitting of the assets. Rachel wasn't just anyone, she was a high-powered attorney at a top firm. She'd have resources, backup, strategy. "This won't be a quick, clean break," Frank said, already calculating what lay ahead. "Her team's going to advise her to stall, delay, make this hurt." "I've got it," Matt replied, calm but focused. "We can keep this civil, for now." "So no burning bridges?" Frank confirmed. Matt nodded slowly. "For now." Later that evening Matt made his last call of the day. This one required a softer touch. "Hi Maggie, it's Matt," he said, his voice low and steady. "We've got some things to figure out. I'll send over a preliminary draft tomorrow. Just wanted to give you a heads up." He hung up, then packed his laptop and headed out. He didn't want to be home. Not tonight. He had checked into a long-term stay hotel out in Fairfax, far enough outside their usual circles that he wouldn't bump into anyone. That was key. He needed the space to think, to regroup, and to vanish from her line of sight for a bit. Once he was settled, he went across the street to a little Mexican restaurant called El Mariachi. He wasn't even hungry, but he knew he had to put something in his stomach. The tequila he planned on drinking needed a foundation, even if it was just tortilla chips and melted cheese. He sat alone in a booth by the window. Nobody ever sat next to him anymore, and honestly he preferred it that way. He scribbled notes on a yellow legal pad, half strategic, half therapeutic. He had no appetite, but he kept eating, kept sipping the tequila, trying to dull the edge of the day. At one point, a waitress walked by and smiled politely. He smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. The place was quiet, save for the faint buzz of music overhead. He excused himself and made his way to the restroom, needing the break. He felt like he was walking on the deck of a ship, the kind of unsteady, swaying feeling you get when your body is still catching up with your emotions. When he came back, someone had cleared his plate and his notepad had shifted slightly. The bartender had replaced his drink and was now leaning over the counter, nodding at the pad. "If you don't want someone to read your secrets," the bartender said with a wry smile, "don't leave them out on the table." Matt blinked, caught off guard. "I'm not a lawyer, Don Nicholas," the bartender added with a smirk, "but I know when someone's working through something heavy." Matt managed a weary laugh. "Yeah, she's with someone else." The bartender didn't flinch. "Figured. You've got the look of a man who's trying to act like this doesn't hurt. But it does. Every guy who sits alone with a notepad and 3 glasses of tequila. Same story." Matt didn't argue. What was the point? "She could have asked me for help," Matt said quietly. "Whatever the problem was, we could have worked through it. But she didn't. She chose someone else." The bartender nodded slowly. "Then it's not about the problem. It's about her." Matt tried to respond but just nodded instead. "Look, I got the evidence, sure," Matt said, breaking the silence. "Frank helped, but the police handled most of it. It didn't hurt that I pulled in a favor from one of the partners at my firm, a former assistant U.S. attorney. Made sure the local Commonwealth's office gave the criminal piece the attention it deserved. That was the thing. Even when love dies, procedure survives. Strategy survives. Matt wasn't done yet. I only showed up with my client to make sure she got what she needed. That's it. No speeches. No drama. Just quiet support. But later that night, sitting at the bar, I got a different kind of advice. You're gonna need to stay blissfully ignorant for a little while," the bartender, El Diablo, as they called him, told me. Get yourself a burner phone. Leave the number here. But don't come back. I nodded. Probably better that way. He was right. I couldn't afford familiarity. Not now. I explained to him, in vague terms, about the private investigator I'd hired and how I was planning to stay out of the house until Rachel left for France. When I mentioned the hotel, he gave me a look, like he already knew which one, but didn't say how. Maybe he'd been around long enough to hear more than he should. I didn't ask. Then he paused, looked at me a little softer than before, and asked, Senor Matt, is there any chance of reconciliation? Forgiveness? I held his gaze. I'm not here for second thoughts, I said. I've already seen too much. Frank handed me a DVD later that night. You might not want to look at it, he warned. Seriously, just take the summary and let it be. I don't want you losing it and doing something stupid. I won't, I told him, sliding the disc into my coat pocket. But give me the rundown. He sighed. Our guy got in the treehouse just like we planned. They didn't talk much, too busy with each other. We've got clear footage. Faces, gestures, the whole thing. Every angle. It's solid. That sinking feeling returned, deep in my gut. Like gravity had doubled. What did they do? Frank didn't sugarcoat it. Everything. Multiple positions. They didn't even bother with the curtains. I closed my eyes for a second, nodded. All right. File the paperwork Monday late afternoon. Right before the office shuts down. Let me know the docket number. I'll take it from there. Matt, Frank said, leaning in, voice serious. You know I don't handle criminal stuff. If things get ugly, I'm not your guy. I cracked the faintest smile. You're gonna be pleasantly surprised, I said, heading for the door. The next day I had a meeting with Sam Granger, the property guy. Turned out it was more productive than I expected. We ran the numbers and figured we could sell the house for well over $100,000 above our original estimate. It was a tear down but still valuable, which meant Rachel's leverage was shrinking, piece by piece. We also had a plan. By the time Thursday morning rolled around, I had the timeline locked in. Dwayne would probably leave for work around 8 a.m., Rachel not far behind at 8:30. So at 7 sharp, I walked through the front door like I still lived there, because technically I did. Honey, I'm home, I called out, cheerful as could be. I heard rushed steps from upstairs. Then Rachel came down, wrapped in a robe, her hair messy, face flushed with panic. She tried to force a smile. Surprise, she said, voice cracking. I thought you weren't back until Friday. You didn't return my calls. Yeah, I said, still smiling. Wrap things up early. Thought I'd come home and take care of a few things. Sorry for the short notice. Her eyes darted around nervously. That mask she wore? Cracking right in front of me. Then she noticed the woman standing behind me. Who's this? She asked, pointing, trying to stay composed but not doing a great job. I'm Maggie, the woman replied, calm and confident. She's a notary, I added casually. Just helping me finalize a few things. Rachel's posture softened just slightly. Not relaxed exactly, but reassured. For now. She still thought she had secrets to protect. And I let her think so. That's my Boy Scout, she said, voice thin and forced. Always prepared. She had no idea just how prepared I was. Rachel smiled, a little too wide, trying to maintain control. That's my Boy Scout, she said, her tone light but her eyes sharp and searching. Matt just nodded, handing her a folder without blinking. Exactly who I've always been, he said simply. Dwayne had vanished before Maggie walked in, probably still somewhere upstairs catching his breath. Maggie, professional as ever, packed up her materials quietly. She gave Matt a knowing smile when Rachel wasn't looking. Nothing dramatic, just a flicker of understanding between two people who saw the whole picture. To give Rachel the space to cover her tracks, Matt announced casually, I've got a client call, teleconference. I'll be in the basement office for a bit. He didn't miss the way her shoulders dropped, just slightly, as if relief had softened her tension. She thought she had time. Time to clean up, make the bed, get Dwayne out without a trace. That's exactly what Matt wanted her to think. Down in the basement, he didn't make any calls. He just sat at his desk, letting the quiet settle. Pretending not to hear the quick whispers, the hurried footsteps above. Giving her the illusion she was still pulling the strings. A few days later, Matt sat across from Harry, going over the signed paperwork again. So, Harry said, flipping through the pages, she's willing to walk away from the marriage with roughly $125,000 in retirement, and about $21,000 in student loan debt, undergrad and law school combined. That right? Right? Matt confirmed, keeping his tone even. She's always been generous. At least when it suited her. Harry looked up, raising an eyebrow. And she signed an affidavit admitting to the affair. Even acknowledged that her lover was in the marital bedroom at the time she signed. Matt nodded. Maggie witnessed the entire thing. Rachel read each document, or at least pretended to. I'm sure she gave them the amount of legal attention she felt they deserved in that moment. Well, Harry said with a half shrug, as long as the notary confirms she signed in front of her, we're good. Doesn't really matter if Rachel understood what she was giving up. We're not in the business of saving people from themselves. I'm counting on that, Matt said quietly. I'll file it today, Harry said, sliding the documents into a thick folder. We'll attach Frank's affidavit and the full report. Photos. The video. I'll see if I can keep it off the electronic docket for a little while. Don't need this showing up on anyone's radar just yet. Matt appreciated that. Discretion still had value even when the damage had already been done. A few days later, Frank called with a status update. Dwayne hasn't been back at the house, he said. Not once since you showed up Tuesday morning. Now, I can't tell if they're meeting at his place or just sticking to office rendezvous, but either way, they're not being reckless under your roof anymore. Good, Matt said. Keep me posted. The only thing that changed was that Matt, in his usual silent way, had started slipping back into the house during the hours Rachel was at work. He wasn't stealing, he was retrieving. Quietly gathering any financial documents he hadn't copied yet, loading everything he might need into a slim leather file case. Statements, receipts, home equity info, title deeds. He also finalized the home sale. Rachel didn't know it yet, but their house was under contract. Sam Granger had been right, they were getting a lot more than expected. It was bittersweet watching a place built on memories become just another transaction. But necessary. And then just like that, Rachel was gone. She boarded her long-anticipated flight to Paris, unaware that she'd been followed to the airport by one of Frank's associates. They waited, watched her check in, and stayed until her plane cleared the runway, bound for the city of love. Matt stood in the silence of the house afterward, listening to nothing. It was the first real quiet he'd felt in weeks. Once I got the word, I knew exactly what to do. I went back to the house while Rachel was still overseas. No hesitation. I gathered every piece of her clothing and dumped it right in the middle of the living room floor. I kept what mattered, just the essentials, just the parts of my life I wasn't leaving behind. The next day the movers came. They were efficient, polite, and fast. They boxed up my belongings and sent them to a storage unit I'd set up. Separate trucks, separate teams. My stuff went to a small apartment I'd rented, something temporary, just a landing spot. I wasn't planning to look back. A few days later, still within the first week of Rachel's trip to France, the construction crew showed up and did exactly what I'd signed off on. They leveled the house. Cleared the lot completely. It was fast, impersonal, and oddly satisfying. Just like our marriage had become toward the end. The tree out back, the one with the old treehouse, didn't make the cut. I hated that. It had always felt like a symbol of possibility, of what could have been if kids had ever become part of our story. But the new design included a gazebo and it needed that space. By the end of the week, our so-called forever home was nothing more than a square of flat dirt. I stood there the morning after the demo, watching the dust settle where our living room once was. It hit me how surreal it all felt. Not sad. Not angry. Just final. When someone from the crew asked if I wanted to keep the shutters, I shook my head. I might know someone who'll want them, I said, even though I didn't. On Wednesday, 2 days before Rachel was due back from Paris, I stopped by Harry's office. I wasn't expecting much, maybe just to check on the paperwork. But Harry looked up from his desk with a strange grin. I don't know how this happened, he said, handing me a document. But here it is. The divorce decree. Signed, sealed. Fastest one I've ever seen, and Seth won't tell me why. I didn't ask. I stared at it. The official stamp. The signature. The final chapter, right there in my hands. Congrats, Harry said. You're a free man. I'll send her a copy too, I'm sure she'll be thrilled. I laughed. But that laugh faded quickly. The phone rang. It was Rachel's father. She's in the hospital, he said, his voice shaking. My posture stiffened. What happened? She got back from the trip Friday, he said. But she never made it home. She and a co-worker were abducted outside the airport. Drugged. Held for days. They just escaped this morning. The co-worker's in critical condition. Rachel's. His voice trailed off. I sat in silence. There was a time, maybe not long ago, when that would have torn me apart. What happened to her? I asked. She woke up, They tattooed her. All over. Words. Symbols. Horrible things. I haven't even seen her yet. But she's alive. Barely. I felt something shift inside me. Not sympathy exactly. Not relief. Just detachment. I'm sorry, I said finally. But I don't think we have anything more to say to each other. And I hung up. I spent the rest of that afternoon sitting at the window of my apartment, watching the city below. Everything felt louder than usual. Sirens, horns, voices. It was like the city itself was screaming. That's when I realized I needed out. I sent an email to SVN. Kept it short. Thanks for everything. But I'm done. You can all respectfully go screw yourselves. That night I found an outdoor gear shop in Soho, loaded up on hiking and camping gear. Everything brand new. I'd never gone camping in my life. Rachel hated nature. She used to joke that mosquitoes were born to find her. Perfect. The next morning I stopped by Harry's office one last time. You get the certified letter? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Not yet, I said, a little surprised. You might want to, Frank added, walking in behind him. Because, my friend, you're not in a storm. He grinned. You're in a typhoon. I've always liked destruction, Harry muttered, downing his bourbon like it was water. He barely let the glass hit the table before signaling for another. Frank grinned. Well, you started it. That Monday morning, Rachel returned from the hospital with her parents in tow. She wasn't limping, but the look on her face, half hollow, half stunned, told me she hadn't yet processed how much of her world was gone. They drove by what used to be our home. The external security camera hadn't been removed yet. I saw the whole thing. The car rolled to a stop, and when she stepped out and saw nothing but dirt and a construction sign, she collapsed. Just fell to her knees right there in the driveway. It was over. And now she understood that. Later that day they showed up at my temporary apartment. I didn't invite them in. I met them at the building's conference room, neutral ground. Her parents looked like they'd aged 10 years since I saw them last. Rachel's father, once all posture and pride, wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't waste time. I played the videos. The ones from the treehouse camera. The bedroom footage. Her actions in what used to be our bed, clear as day. They looked mortified. Her mother even had to leave the room. Rachel tried to defend herself. You didn't give me a chance to explain. I shook my head. You had all the chances, Rachel. You still broke what we agreed on. Then came the accusations. She said I had no right to sell the house without her permission. That burning her wedding dress and photo albums was petty and vindictive. I pulled out the signed power of attorney documents. You signed these? In front of a notary. You remember Maggie, right? Rachel's face turned ghostly pale. I also showed them links, password-protected backups of the video footage. Then I looked her square in the eye and said, if you drag this out, I will send these to everyone who ever sent you a wedding card. She got the message. They left. Quickly. I haven't heard from any of them since. Frank filled in the rest of the fallout a few days later. Apparently, detectives had shown up asking about the videos. I had already sent copies to Harry just in case. They filed a report, but it went nowhere fast. Neither Rachel nor Dwayne could explain where they were for 3 days. All they told the cops was that they took a cab from the airport. Vague. Suspicious. But not enough to charge anyone. Meanwhile, Rachel's firm took a serious hit. They'd been in the middle of a big case, and thanks to her sudden disappearance and overall collapse, things fell apart. Exhibits weren't ready. Witness prep was a mess. They lost flat out. And the client was furious. The firm had to make major concessions just to keep them from walking. Someday, Frank said, sipping his coffee with the satisfied air of a man who'd just watched a legal thriller unfold in real life, you're going to have to tell us how you pulled all of this off. I shrugged, grinning. What's there to tell? I'm a Boy Scout. Always prepared. As I left, Maggie was already in the car waiting. Frank called out behind me with a laugh. You know, I'm a little jealous. No one even asked whether she really notarized the documents. I just smiled and shut the door. Some truths don't need to be spoken. Thanks for listening. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Have you ever stayed silent when your heart was breaking? Would you have done the same? And hey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got more stories to tell. Some messy, some healing, all human. See you in the next one.